Thank you so much for joining us this evening. I'm excited to talk about sort of what's been the impact of the Trump administration in its first year. Very excited because we are joined by Kate Green of We the Builders and Reilly Martin, Executive Director of Technologists for Public Good. Our three organizations kind of wanted to get together to sort of do a check-in on what's been the impact of DOGE and the Trump administration's actions on public interest technology. We know that we are in a much different world than we were last year, and it's good to sort of check in. So with that, we'll do some quick introductions and then jump right into it. My name is Christopher Whitaker. I am the Executive Director for the Alliance of Civic Technologists. We are a network of volunteer civic organizations like Shy Hack Night who get together, learn, and talk about the issues at the intersection of civic and technology. We tend to operate more at street level with our volunteers working with community nonprofits, local governments, and state governments to solve big problems. With that, I'll turn it over to Reilly Martin.
Hi, all. Thanks for the invitation to join tonight. I run an organization that's focused on supporting folks that work in and in support of government technology. So about half the folks that in our network literally work in government roles, or most recently did over the past year. And the other half work for what we see as the full ecosystem for folks that support projects through the vendor ecosystem, through the nonprofit ecosystem, excited nonprofits, academia, et cetera. And folks are in three different areas. One, professional development, so helping folks sort of like level up in their careers or within the field. Two, community management and building. So how do we help get connected to folks outside of this room and across the nation? And three, through some advocacy work. So how do we solidify this work a little bit more? We've done a great job at convincing people to join, a great job at building up tremendous projects. But as we've seen in this year, we've got to do a better job of how do we legislatively get more of this solidified so the less of it can be crumbled so easily. Thanks.
All right. And now Kate.
Everybody, I'm Kate Green. I'm an software engineer and a former U.S. digital service person. So Christopher is coming in at very much the street level. Reilly is kind of the middle glue. A lot of what I've been doing is at the federal level. About a year ago, 11 months, we started We the Builders out of a bunch of U.S. digital service people. And what we were thinking about was what is actually happening. Like one of the things we observed at the time, and specifically me, because this is a place I always wanted to work, was in translating what's happening in tech for people in government to make better decisions. Like I always imagined working for like translating for the Supreme Court would just be amazing. And so we took that idea, combined that with the idea of telling the story of what actually happens inside of federal government, and then started a report on both. And we've published 50 or 60, 70 stories. Right now we're a bit on a hiatus. This is hard work. All of us who are working close to any sort of government right now is finding it difficult. But we were running very quickly, rolled the site in 5 days last February. And it's been an amazing opportunity to get a vantage on what's actually happening. So I'm looking forward to chatting with Reilly and Christopher for you all today.
So last year, when Trump was inaugurated, they quickly initiated the DOGE, or the Department of Government Efficiency. The way that worked is they took the United States Digital Service and sort of zombified it to where it now became the United States DOGE service, or if you really wanted to get into technical, the United States Department of Government Efficiency Service. And for a long time, nobody knew who actually ran the U.S. DOGE service, but we saw the results in their actions in terms of cutting government programs, laying off government workers, and doing what I would call shenanigans with a lot of the systems used to as the infrastructure for the federal government. And so one of the things that we wanted to start off asking, and I'll turn to Reilly because she's been closest to the people who've been working in government, is sort of what are the numbers on on who lost their jobs and sort of the impact across the different agencies?
Good question. We can also drop a link because the data is fairly accurate to my understanding. But the federal government did actually just release some personnel data today that is in line with what we've been seeing in the news cycles that's been coming out. It's been heavily covered by news, but across the board, not just technologists, we've seen just under 325,000 people that have left the government in the past year. Those ranging across every single different department. I will say civic technologists have been cut very hard. Obviously not as hard as like entire divisions like USAID or rumors across the Department of Education, but definitely like we have seen it in every single department and every single different division across every single role type. There was some suspicions at first that it was going to be pretty heavily design forward, but we've seen it as just like roles across the board, anywhere from design to data to product management to cyber, and anywhere from folks just looking to enter the field in terms of fellowships and looking to explore this career or career switching, all the way to folks who have 25 plus years of folks serving in the government and particularly serving in the federal government. I will also note, if you look at the data too, it shows that the workforce this is the lowest the workforce has been in a decade. And folks have reported since the 1960s, but I don't necessarily have a specific data source for that, but definitely like hard and fast data for the lowest in the last decade by a long shot.
It's a lot of people. Kate, one of the things I appreciated that you and your team did is, as DOGE was cutting 18F and USDS, and sort of people were raising alarms about the loss of these institutions, we the Builder started publishing stories about the work that was being done before DOGE and kind of what happened to those programs as people were leaving. Do you want to talk about kind of what those employees were working on and kind of what some of the projects that stand out?
Sure. The easy big one to talk about is the bigger projects that were canceled. I had the great privilege of working on Direct File from 2022 and then again in 2023 and 2024. And that is gone now. Tax season's opening up in 2 weeks, and there's one less option for filing for free. That project comprised over 100 people, partially contractors, partially government employees. That's the easy one. Then you're looking at the diminishing of the kinds of services that we're seeing. So things like, are you having extra time I went to Social Security yesterday and my Safari browser no longer works. It's something as small as that. I had to go onto Chrome. It's things like longer wait times. So the SNAP stuff during the lapse in funding, the government shutdown. We are seeing within agencies just one person doing the work of 6 or trying to. Nobody can work that hard. So there's just we're going to see a lot of trailing indicators here, like as the services start to degrade. And the thing I'm a little bit proud of, more than a little bit, a lot proud of, a lot of these systems are still up and moving. And that's really important to remember. Like Social Security, yeah, it doesn't work on Safari, but I still was able to, file my W-2 that I needed to file. And but that's the thing, what we're observing is like things are degrading, but we're still holding firm. And I can say from the people that I work with in my day job, they're working their butts off, just trying to keep up. And to Reilly's point, it is across all job types. I've seen the network crew where I work, the cyber crew. It's not just like all the designers got wiped out or all the analysts or whatever things. It's pretty, across the board, going from staffs of 100 to 25 in some offices. It's like, and you think you're going to be more efficient. I just can't. Like, it's so ridiculous. Like, you can't be efficient if you fire everybody.
And I know you know a lot of these people.
Oh, I was just to say, I think too, like what we were also seeing, we're seeing less of, but we're still seeing quite often and did see quite right after a lot of the terminations was morale, right? I think that like, yes, we're operating and folks are surviving and that's great. And we've all been the people that are like trying to do too much with too little. But that only lasts so long, right? Even heading into the 2025, typically this industry sees a 25 to 30% burnout. I can only imagine we're going to see that like double, right, in the next year, which is wild. And so I think that's one thing that we'll continue to see and is heartbreaking. The other thing too, I forgot to mention is, Kate started alluding to this, but like how this is affecting people beyond just the little people that got fired, right? Like this is affecting their entire families, it's impacting their entire communities, and the field at large, right? So we didn't even mention all the contractors that lost tremendous amounts of work that then also had to lay off people. So when we think about like that trickle down effect, we're seeing much, much more people just across the field outside of just federal workers.
And that's hitting.
Yeah.
I'm near DC, and it's hitting a bit of our communities as well. So since there's so many of us here, so there's that as well.
Yeah, and I know you know a lot of former USDS and former 18F. When DOGE was first were shutting down these programs, and sort of when the fort came out, can you talk a little bit how morale and how people sort of work through that as human beings?
Yeah, happy to. First of all, the fork is the deferred resignation program. We were all hired because we're able to de-jargon, and we're going to de-jargon each other through this talk here. That was the deferred resignation program, and the U.S. Digital Service and 18F were kind of partner organizations within the federal government. Started around the same time, 2014, 2015. Morale. My friends that I was working with, I left U.S. Digital Service in October of 2024, but I was still in a lot of groups with people who were still there on February 14th. That day, 25, I think, of my colleagues were fired between 7:30 and 9:30 Eastern on Valentine's night. You can only imagine how that felt, but maybe you're hearing it in my voice. There's also this drive to do something. And that's how we felt that night. Like I remember running my errands, and I got fired. Oh, I got the email. Oh, I got the email, all these signal messages. And I'm just like, I cannot believe that they would have this, like, what is this? So but it was always a mix. It's always a mix when you're going through a hard time in your life, and despair. And then the next hour you're like, oh, I'm going in, I'm going to go do the thing. What people were looking for then, and I think we're still looking for this today. Like Christopher, we were talking about this, and when we were we shared a call because we work in the same place. We were on a call today. It's like we're all looking for something to do, a way to contribute, and that's how we felt that day. And the people who contributed to We the Builders over the last year have all been just looking for a way to do something. Like I've had people just drop out of the sky, like the internet sky, and be like, I want to help. And I felt like in the end I was bringing, like We the Builders and me as the executive director, bringing hope to, and the ability to actually contribute in a way that people want to make the world better. And so morale continues to be low, continues to be hard. But what I'm seeing from people who are they're working so hard, and they're trying to find something to hold on to. They care very deeply, and I don't think they'll ever stop caring. I don't know, Reilly, Christopher, if you're seeing people around you who've left and are still doing their job.
Yeah.
And
Well,
you're just like friends.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I really appreciated about what Technologists for Public Good did was as the layoff news was coming in, TPG switched to helping people find jobs. Reilly, do you want to talk a little bit about that and kind of how y'all spun that up?
Yeah, so there's lots of other organizations that do this work and only do help getting people jobs into government. So shout out Coding It Forward, shout out Tech Talent Project. Those organizations are still around. Would definitely encourage you to look into those. But one of the things that is beneficial is that we run an entire community that's nationwide of folks, of hundreds, thousands of folks who literally care. They just need people to tell them what you need. Because I think to Kate and Chris, both of your points, a lot of us are dealing with a lot in life, particularly this year, and just trying to figure out like where is our best place to help. And every single time someone asks for help in the organization, someone raised a hand and did so. It was just saying, what specifically do you need? Where do you need it? And so we continue to do that. I think what we've tried to do actually is grow the contract opportunities that we're seeing and that community members are seeing, because again, we excitingly have seen folks who've got support turn around, and about 50 to 75% of folks who asked for help have gotten a job. About 50% of those jobs have been in public interest tech careers. So folks are able to stay around, people are willing to stay around. But we don't know, we don't know. And two, I think like people are reevaluating what types of jobs they're looking for. So we'll obviously get into this, but folks are looking to go back into the federal government. There are some places to work there. We can talk through sort of like cautions, ethical things to think through as you're thinking through those. But folks are looking to get back in both for reasons of necessity, aka paying their bills. Some people are like really interested in getting back and doing some of the work that's happening. Folks are really interested in working at different levels of government, but there's also a ton of other opportunities in contract, in vendor work, in nonprofit work. But a lot of folks are exploring what does it look like to just like support myself and my family and potentially work less hours. And so there are a lot of folks that are looking for contract opportunities. So that's one thing that we're seeing a little bit of a pivot in and trying to support a little bit more.
Yeah, one of the things we noticed on the volunteer side is a lot of people still want to do this work. Unfortunately, love doesn't pay the bills, and so we've had sort of a mix of people who were employed outside of federal government and outside of a federal contractor who weren't impacted. But what we've seen is because of other issues that have cropped up, things like SNAP benefits being stopped, immigration. The incursions of ICE and border control in our cities, a lot of people have had to prioritize what they volunteer on. And whereas sort of in the early days of civic tech, where you had people working on sort of an app for that, now you see people doing more block and tackle work where they're providing cybersecurity training to attorneys, or they're teaching people how to use Signal who are not the most technically savvy in the world, but they need to be on Signal in order to sort of do that community volunteer work. And so it's been sort of an interesting twist in that we see people more engaged in their communities, but not necessarily heavily leaning on the tech stuff. And that is perfectly okay, because it's kind of what's needed in the moment.
100%. Kate can probably speak more well to this than I can, but I think that the most interesting thing is, again, people wanting to use their voice, wanting to step up, but also like a very real reality of like being potentially attacked or being very vulnerable when you don't necessarily have the true protections in place. And I think that like a few folks have pointed out well to me that like even the best folks who do this in cyber are like up against folks with millions of dollars of resources and huge arsenals that like most of us mere humans just don't have access to. So Kate, if you want to talk to some of the work that you've all done, I think that, you know, you've bridged that gap well to like enable people to use their voices while still feeling protected.
Yeah, well, before jumping in, I was already just thinking about how to get in. I was looking for my place to jump off. And so thinking about my own personal threat model was a big first step. You know, how can I protect myself physically, you know, physical security here at my house, you know, and also the cyber side. But then how do I, you know, how did we, and it was a group of engineers thinking about how do we set up a process, you know, and like a dead drop idea of being able to, you know, have people submit their stories. And we ended up with like two firewalls between the submissions that we got and what eventually published. And not even like what was submitted was not, I never saw it, even though I posted I was the one who published most of the articles. So we were thinking about, you know, how to do that. And there's a lot of, like, if you're thinking about anything like this, the New York Times open source their dead drop online submission methods that you can use. We ended up not using those, but those are something if you really want to take it seriously. I think ProPublica has some stuff as well in that same space. So if that's something that's important to you, and then there's other things. If you specifically are thinking about this, there's other resources out there. Activist Checklist is one, but there's, yeah, it's real. And, you know, I'm sitting here before you because I'm still okay speaking in public. I can tell you I've not been quoted in any newspaper articles lately, very much on purpose. So it's walking some lines. But also remembering that I'm really actually, the reason I'm doing Did We the Builders, the reason why I'm doing the work I am still doing is because I'm here for the American people and people who live in America to have the services that they should have. So like, that's what I'm here for. I don't want to be attacked, but I don't know what else to do. Keep moving.
Yeah. One of the sort of the consistent stories that we hear about DOGE and sort of the ways that our data is being used in ways that previous administrations would never dream of, um, mainly around respecting user privacy and trying not to build a mass surveillance machine. Can you talk a little bit about sort of the difference between sort of what USDS would do when faced with a situation around user privacy and kind of what's being done now?
So I'm gonna make a little bit of a right turn and define DOGE in this instance as a mindset, and a mindset that has veered, to your question, from how we would have engaged at the U.S. Digital Service or at 18F or any of the digital services within federal governments, where people I mean, like, these are laws, really, to keep data separate. There's a reason why Social Security data did not touch IRS data. And it's not about like not being efficient. It's about privacy. It's about keeping things walled off. Yeah, maybe it was meant to be inefficient. It's not that, like, I want people to get their services, but delivering oh my gosh, I'm taking this on so many right turns. The definition of efficiency that is baked into the DOGE name was defined by engineers. And what do engineers think of when we think of inefficiency? There's many of you in the audience. Like, just pull your head, think of your engineer friends. What is it? Builds run automatically. Builds run quickly. Like, what does that have to do with like my neighbor who's out of a job getting food for their children? The only thing it should be is how quickly can we verify that they're eligible and getting them the money they need? That is not the same kind of efficiency. Efficiency in engineering terms is not the right definition for the kind of work we want when we're doing service delivery. Like, I really, really want to ship code quickly, but that doesn't necessarily equal good service delivery. I told you, two right turns in the middle of that. Going back to your question around what we would have done differently, we would stop and think. We would follow the laws. We would check with attorneys a lot. Maybe they are checking with attorneys. We don't know. But I can tell you that combining data because you want to like use it, let's it got me fired up. Let's talk about what happens when you combine SSA data and IRS data. And SSA has a mainframe and IRS has a mainframe. And any of us who've worked anywhere near mainframes, then that they're usually the data structures are pretty old, and maybe like 32 characters here and 32 characters here for your first and last name with a middle initial. Let's talk about our friends who are possibly from Central America. I'm in DC. We have a lot of El Salvadorans, a lot of Hondurans and Guatemalans. And the names that I've seen, their full names tend to be too long for these things. And if we're focusing on people from like Central America, South America, the name structures are different. How does SSA mangle somebody's name who is, Garcia Gonzalez, and then how IRS does it? Can they really even match? I don't know. I don't want to know. We've got to have better ways of using our data well and taking it and be thoughtful and not just like throw slapdash here, Palantir, have some fun.
Yeah.
Doesn't work.
One of the smartest things that the Defense Digital Service did, Defense Digital Service is sort of the Department of Defense version of the U.S. Digital Service. And when we had our product team spinning up, we had a attorney embedded into the team. And so it wasn't us trying to figure out a solution, then going to legal to get a mother may I. They were in the room with us. And one of my jobs as a bureaucracy hacker was to figure out how to reduce friction while still respecting the risks that the regulations were trying to address. And so you would end up having conversations where I'm across the screen from the attorney and I'm going, well, what if we do this? And he's like, no, what if I do this? And they would very gently explain the legal risks and why this might not be such a great idea. And we would go back and forth until we found a path forward. And to me, that isn't inefficient or government red tape. That's kind of the job I have as a bureaucracy hacker. That's the work. Um, and so you can't you can't just go around that because the regulations were written probably because something messed up or someone got cheated or somebody got hurt, and we don't want to do that again. Um,
I'll
so
say I
sort of in
think
addition,
the one of the things that has gotten lost over the last year is that a lot of us who've worked in government also agree there's places we could have been, quote, more efficient. And I think that if you ask any person, you could probably come up with a congruent list of 3 to 5 things in probably an hour. And it's disappointing, right? There's things that like a lot of us, I think, Chris, to your point, that maybe we would have loved to change or would have made our projects better or faster, more efficient for a lot of different folks, a lot of across the United States, but we'll never know, right? A lot of that institutional knowledge was also lost along the way, in an unfortunate way.
Well, and
yeah.
there's the there are ways we want them to talk. I just said I filed W-2s with Social Security Administration. W-2s go back and forth between IRS, but there are laws on how you do it. But there is data that really we want to be able to be talking to each other. One of the challenges in these moments is to be completely reactionary. And Reilly, you kind of alluded to it, like to be very reactionary, like those people are all wrong. That's hard. It's hard to come in and be fired up and not just be completely against. Like there are opportunities in this moment. And there are ways that we can use this moment to make government better. It's the slash and burn, the lack of thought, the lack of care that is difficult.
Reilly, you had mentioned sort of the loss of institutional knowledge. Um, with that and with so much tech talent now out the door, has your group sort of seen degradation of in services and kind of things starting to suffer because we've taken so much talent out of government, both on the tech side and on the public servant side?
I mean, I think even outside of just like what I do day to day, right? I think that I would argue maybe like all of us have seen it in individual pieces of our lives. Um, I'll reference my own also calling in the last administration and this administration. It shouldn't take me 5 times calling the IRS for 1 to 2 hours at a time to get a simple answer question answered. And we're seeing that right as a direct correlation of folks that have just been like slash and burned out of the IRS, specifically. You know, we see this constantly in the news. We focus less on direct service when it comes to things like SNAP and TANF, but I think you can follow the umpteen other organizations who do also focus on that stuff. The Beck Center, Code for America, Public Benefits and Innovation Fund, and you can like see direct correlations in some of the work that they're doing and funding is a direct correlation to the degradation of service and the direct correlation of the degradation of and elimination of positions.
So, sort of in a twist, you fired all the tech people in government, and now the administration has announced both the National Design Studio and then the U.S. Tech Force. Um, in the spirit of wanting to be good people, what advice would you have for people who are looking at Tech Force and National Design Studio and thinking like, is this somewhere where I could help? Is this like really a good path, or sort of if I do this, kind of what should I watch out for?
Yeah, I can start. I mean, it's interesting because if you talk to anyone of the folks that we work with day to day, it's like completely across the board in terms of folks' opinion about stuff. So like I mentioned, there's folks that are very much interested in joining who like believe that they can get in and this is a route in to some of the work that they'd like to be doing. There's folks on the other side that are saying, I would never recommend it, don't do it. And I think that like overarchingly, again, we just want folks to feel like they have their eyes wide open. So regardless, I think that like we by and large know that you will be and may be asked to face ethical dilemmas. There's, big questions about the styles of working. Kate started mentioning this around like particularly engineering, but when we think about like our belief in agile open source software development that serves the American people, we've definitely seen degradation in like the products that they're putting out, both from a like accessibility, language, user center focused. Again, loss of people with experience. We're definitely seeing folks who just aren't supported, right? They just don't have other people in their department, their division that come with this experience. So there's no way to like have support for your project or your program, or just frankly to like learn from other folks who've come before you, which is a huge benefit and what a lot of folks look for, particularly when they are at particular points in their career. So that's where I would start and like talk to folks about engagement. But Kate would be curious your thoughts too.
Um, they're focusing a lot on early career people. So they're people who would really benefit from those mentors. So I would be asking questions about what that looks like. Also, the kinds of projects you'd be placed on if you want to go in. Um, if you are an early career person, I might honestly might look for other opportunities to grow your skills. Things are changing, especially on the engineering side. I'm seeing a lot more, vibe coding, a lot more use of AI tools, and figuring out how to do that well with senior engineers and how we're learning about it, or maybe plugging our ears like me. But that means that there's a diversity of thought that I think comes with big change in an industry. And so without that, it's the same, Reilly's bringing up the right risks that I would also bring up. The other thing there is there's a feel of like haphazardness coming out of especially the design studio right now, what they're putting out. And so I guess like the trade-off I would ask yourself if you're planning to try this out is how, is speed over accuracy your thing? And if so, have at it. And there's a place that, for us to do all kinds of different work, which may sound a little too placating, but I don't mean it that way. We're all making our choices for where we work and how we work right now. And we need each of us to make our contributions. Last thing to flag, this was burnout work during the Biden years. I burned out at least 3 times at the U.S. Digital Service in 2.5 years. It wasn't easy before, and
And
now
you
it's
weren't
a
being asked to
lacking.
work until 2 a.m.
Mostly no. I don't think I ever worked at 2 in the morning unless I dreamed about work, which definitely happened. Um, but it's just I don't. Yeah, it wasn't easy before, and that institutional knowledge and the people that I got to work with, that was a lot of why I kept going, even when the projects were difficult. And the impact, I was always hoping for impact. It's hard to measure it in this kind of work. Um, but yeah, anyway, yeah,
So,
that's what I would say.
so definitely want to leave time for questions. We've got about 15 minutes. So I'll turn it over to our gracious host to kind of let us know what you're thinking.
All right. Um, Thanks y'all so much for the wealth of insight, and we're looking forward to audience questions. So I'll encourage folks, if you have questions that you'd like to ask, please take a moment and share them in the chat. Um, I'll start with one of our audience questions that has already been submitted, but please, of course, folks, feel free to continue to share questions. Um, Reading from first audience question. In our house, we have my spouse who left CISA and went to the state of Illinois in 25. Meanwhile, I've been at Cook County for years and saw some new feds come in and fill some roles we had open. Any interesting observations about feds who ended up in state and local roles?
Riley, do you want to take that one first?
I'll expand it to actually beyond other roles too. So I think like where I would start this is more folks like understanding the roles that they can take, which has been a huge win. Like I'll just frame it as like mission-based roles because yes, like there have been a tremendous amount of state and local opportunities. Candidly, like, there's just I think like one misconception is there's like not jobs or not enough jobs. I think that that's actually been like proved wrong because states and locals have stepped up in a huge way and folks have found their way into jobs. And again, like we've seen that firsthand. I think like my initial observation was that folks wouldn't take those jobs because there's a huge pay differential. I have been proven wrong. Um, I think that there are other interesting observations of, so much of state and local work is so much implementation and like, yes, a little bit of strategy and but by and large implementation and by and large where you're doing like four different roles that like maybe there was four different positions in the federal government. And so I think that's been like interesting learning journey for a lot of folks of like being tasked with roles that like we would see otherwise, right? That they the role might say product manager, but they're really like 50% product manager, 25% project manager, and like 25% business analyst. Um, and just like being asked to do so much implementation after like multiple years of being really strategy heavy. And so again, like I don't think that that's a surprise, but I think that like something I personally wasn't anticipating being a challenge, but like retrospectively, like of course that's a challenge, right? When we like strip resources and ask people to do things who've been like doing one thing for a few different years, it's definitely a pivot. Is one maybe observation I would make, and it seems like Kate and Chris are both nodding their heads in agreement.
My observation is there's a lot of implementation work and there's a lot that we can bring. But I think that the thing to remember as if any of you are former feds and are looking into state is to remember that people around you have been doing it for a bit and to make sure you're listening. Like I can even hear it in my voice sometimes, like when I was in the federal government, it's like, oh dear Lord, Kate, you're like my grandfather already. Like, and it's where it's worth always taking into account who's around you and who has that institutional knowledge. But there's a lot of great work to be doing at the state level. And in my brief time working at the state level, I was so much closer to the people. So like it's a really cool place to be. And it'd be neat to get to work for my state of Maryland at some point. It's kind of on my list of things. So
It is funny. Sorry, that's heard my I have a few folks, one who runs a local nonprofit, one who now works in the local justice division at the county. And that's actually been both our former vets. And that has been actually their like biggest observation is people basically like revolting when they talk about their federal work experience or their like foreign work experience, which again is interesting. I think that again, it's like a philosophical thing that you debate every single day with different people, but that's actually that's been another one. So I'm glad you mentioned that.
I'll just say before we get to the next question, the states that figure out how to fund positions to bring in this talent are the states that are going to win. So with that, I think we're ready for our next question.
All those states listening, there you have it. Thank you for sharing. I'll read the next audience questions. Of course, folks, please continue to share questions. I'll read this. In reference to what you were discussing earlier, Kate, if an organization was collecting and creating databases about the ICE activities and actions, how much effort do you think that they should put into keeping the data private, both within the organization and with dozens of volunteers?
well, I would want to find a cyber expert. Christopher, you mentioned about doing cyber training. I imagine that was from the individual side. I would want to be thinking about how the database is secured. Especially if you're storing any sort of PII, any information like your name and address and date of birth, and anything that you can combine together to turn into, this is Kate Green, she lives here, that kind of stuff. I would want to think about encryption. I would be thinking about maybe if you have volunteers, are you able to raise money to get a professional in? Because a lot of times with volunteers, you're putting your sweat equity in, but if you can pay somebody to do an evaluation, that may help you. I would really want to take care of that data because especially with ICE, I mean, we see it here in DC, but I know you all have really, really been through it. So I would also want to be leaning on other people who've been on the front lines. And, hey, Christopher, like, I know that you may be somebody who could hook people up like tomorrow.
So from a not the software side, but sort of the organizational best practices side, what I tell everyone who is thinking about activist work is people need to understand their threat model. That's what do you know, who wants to get it, how bad are they going to try to get it, and how much are you willing to work to make sure they don't get it. For everybody's going to have a different threat model. If you are an immigration attorney, you have a lot more information that's what I would consider critical than I would have. So people in general think about that. Best practices would be sort of make sure that you're sort of have need to know rules in effect. If I am um, an attorney, I have information that I need to know. But if I'm on school patrol, do I need to know who at my school is not a citizen? No, I don't. I just have to stand out there. Like, I don't need to know, so I don't want to know. And if I don't know and someone does break into my phone, there's not going to be anything useful on my phone because I don't know. So sort of thinking about ways that we're being careful with the information that we're given. When I worked for the Defense Department, we also thought this way in that we only wanted to collect the bare amount of information needed to accomplish the job. We, if it wasn't needed, we didn't want it, and that helped keep it safe.
Thank you all for sharing. I will move to the next question. Our audience question is, future speculation is really challenging, of course, but what's top of mind for you all as you look ahead toward the next year plus?
I think for our ACT members, it's looking at all the ways that we've shut down, like we've reduced SNAP benefits starting at the beginning of the year, thanks to the one big bill. We're seeing continued federal incursions into cities, kind of who in our community is going to need the most help, and what are ways that we can use our skills in useful ways to boost their efforts. And a lot of times, I think it's going to be block and tackle tech work. I think it's going to be training. I think it's going to be Excel sheets. I think it's basic websites. I don't think we're going to be in the business of, oh, this app will do all these fancy great things. I think it's just being the tech person for whatever they need. And I'll pass it over to Reilly for her thoughts on this one.
Just supporting people. I mean, you've heard me say it a few different times, but like again, theoretically, the federal government in particular is going to be welcoming in 1,000+ people per their public announcements. So on one side, like we'll never discourage anyone from joining public service. I think that goes for all three of us and a lot of folks on this call. But how do we ensure that those folks feel like they're being supported and like welcome into a career that they feel, if they want to be, could be a lifelong career from here on out, rather than coming in being completely decimated like the folks that have come before?
For me, top of mind is understanding what's happening and watching the changes, trying hard not to become numb to it, while also taking time to rest. So coupling that. So what I mean there is this is going to end. Like this shift, it's going to change again, and to understand where we are, to take stock. That's going to be our first thing. So as much as we know what's happening, we can understand, how to react. So there's that. And then there really is the people. I can't emphasize enough getting in your communities. I have such a federal focus as a person, but when it really comes down to it, my neighbor right across the street, I know I can rely on her. I know I have my friends in Signal. And I've got enough people who I could just call and be like, come over, help me out. I need help now. And those communities are what holds us together. Especially in the hard times. Like look anytime after a natural disaster, look how you all came together with ICE I mean, cannot underestimate the respect from, DC, where it wasn't quite so fierce. And I love that. Like those kinds of moments are when communities build, and then that's when action can really truly happen. So those are my two top of mind.
Thank you so much all for sharing. We have just a few more minutes, and so I'll get to, um, I think, our last question or two. Um, we have an audience question that is, what are your thoughts on positions that have been reduced in manpower being done away with if the one or two people working in them now end up leaving due to harmful work environments?
My guess is it's happening, but because it's happening every single day at every single level of government, for honestly, like sometimes good reasons and sometimes less great reasons. For perspective, sometimes it's a way for folks to, actually move up in roles if positions didn't exist, and sometimes it's disappearing. So, I can almost guarantee this is happening across the board, both from like people leaving because of the harmful work environment and for like 15 other reasons. I can't say the exact number of positions, but it's absolutely not like probably 300,000.
When people burn out, they're either just going to not work hard for a while because they just can't. It's not that they don't want to, most of the time. But yeah, it's happening. I'm seeing it, and I don't blame the people who are being overworked.
I think I have a good question to follow on this one, which is, do you have any guidance for folks who are aspiring entrants to the civic technology field who may be feeling discouraged?
So, yes. And this is me both wish casting and future casting. There will come a day when this will change. We're already seeing that a lot of these policies and a lot of these results that are extremely unpopular. This is not sustainable. This will change. And when that changes, we're going to have to be ready for the rebuilding and the reconstruction. That means understanding what problem sets really are, what we need to do to correct them, and what we need to do to secure all the holes that have been punched in, both the federal government and sort of the trickle down effect that that's had on state and local governments. So to me, it's the closest historical equivalent is we saw right after the Great Depression that you had Francis Perkins in the Social Security Act and sort of all sorts of building of government programs to make sure that, like, hey, we just had a period of time in which a lot of people starved. We're not going to have that happen again, and start building up those programs and the safety net. I think we're going to see that again, and I think the more when people are in the right mindset to sort of think about how we build that in the future, I think the better prepared we're going to be.
I also just want to say thanks for acknowledging it, right? I think the first thing is like, yeah, a lot of us feel that way right now, and it's really hard, and like let's not pretend that's not true while also feeling passionate like there is work to be done. So, find your community, right? I'm glad that you're here. These folks obviously like also care and probably are with you in person. Find them in person, and just connect with people again. Like I mentioned, the number one thing is almost everyone in this field wants to help, but they've got their own stuff. So like raise your hand and identify how and where you want that help.
And if you're discouraged, like the thing that immediately preceded my jumping in, like pretty much diving in, was that I realized I was so tired of being dragged down. I've been through a couple of hard things lately and the last couple of years. And right before all this went down, I was like, they're not taking my joy. They're not. And what that looks like when you're feeling despair, I don't know. That was just a switch that flipped in my head. But I want you all to remember that there are beautiful things still. Like here in DC, we had the most glorious sunset last night. And I was at the library with my kids and I just kept staring out the window. And like it's still hard, but like they can't have my fucking joy. Like There's so much great out there. And remember that as you then decide to jump in, however much you can, support your people, your community, whatever that looks like. It's even little bits, the tiniest things, holding a door even, y'all, like it's, I know that feels like a platitude, but I really mean it. If you're feeling the despair, try to remember that, and then try to crawl out, find your people, show up and do the local stuff where you can look the people in the eye that you're actually working with. VITA is an IRS tax filing service for low-income Americans. They take volunteers, they train them how to file taxes. I am a tax expert. I'm kind of a nerd in this way. I might end up volunteering for myself. These are the kinds of things that you can do. And just look for those. And don't really, next time that you feel really down about it, fuck them. Don't, it's my joy's mine. I'm keeping it.
I'd like to thank our panelists so much for sharing your experiences and insights here. This has been a wonderful occasion, and see appreciation coming from the Shy Hack Night community as well. We'll close here, and again, thank you so much. And we'll look forward to following along the continued work of this community, and we'll be sure to share any additional links, etc., through the Shy Hack Night channel. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.